I'm Colin Fair. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Behavioral Sciences at UAGC. I'm one of the co-chairs along with my colleague Liz Cruson, who will be working in the background to make sure everything runs smoothly. So we want to make sure everybody has a good experience. So just a reminder, encouraging everyone to go into speaker view so you can see the slides and the presenter. And then of course the chat is a great place to interact throughout as we're moving forward. So we have two awesome presenters today, Dr. Joe Kappa, the project manager for the Office of Academic Innovation, Operations and Technology for UAGC, and Dr. Brian Aylward is the Associate Vice President of the Office of Academic Innovation, Operations and Technology. So I will turn it over to them today. They're going to talk about applying a collaborative project management focus to the Culture of Care Summit.
Thanks, Colin. As you mentioned, I work for Brian in the Academic Office of Academic Operations, Innovation, Technology. I've been here almost 2 years, and the role that I have, actually Brian created that role, or brought it back rather. So it's interesting how we have got to this point. I'm going to kick it to Brian now for him to give it just a brief introduction, and then we'll jump right to the slides.
Hey everyone, Dr. Brian Aylward. I am, as you said, the AVP over the Academic Innovation, Operations and Technology. I've been with our institution now for 16 years. Excited to share with you a little bit about history surrounding the project management space within academics, and kind of ultimately what we're trying to accomplish, what we've been able to do, and where we're kind of heading from here. So let's pass it back to you, Joe.
So you see an agenda here, and some of this is the research that I did, or that Brian and I did rather, to get to this point. So I've got a bunch of slides. If we don't get to them all, the presentations, I believe, will be made available. But sustainable project management, ethics of care, ethical leadership, that's the research that we did to, and virtual project management, teams and knowledge management, that was the research that we put together to support our presentation. What I really want to focus on is, to Brian's point, how we got here, what we did for the Culture of Care Summit from a project management perspective, and how we plan on carrying forward merging culture of care with project management in academics. Next slide.
Perfect, thanks, Joe. Just want to give a little bit of background on the academic space and kind of why we were looking to introduce project management. Obviously, we knew that we had a need for a true project manager within academics. We had projects that were being managed kind of across the board by various stakeholders, various roles, various positions with varying levels of actual project management experience. What we wanted to do was integrate a project management culture and mindset into what we're doing in academics. You can imagine the volume of projects and things that we have constantly moving at the institution. And Joe's kind of come on board here and really helped to standardize a lot of the processes, improve our ability to kind of keep things moving forward and reporting out things a lot. So as you can see here, the need for project management really fell into these 5 categories here. You know, coordination without a dedicated project management team. There were a lot of challenges with competing institutional priorities and resource limitations. There was an inherent need for improved coordination and collaboration among all of the stakeholders involved in all of the academic initiatives we had. You know, Joe was able to really kind of come in and take some of the responsibilities for tracking projects, milestones, stakeholder accountability, which tended to fall on varying people across all of academics. The academic projects, for example, would be decentralized with various managers, directors, and other stakeholders. Joe was able to come in here and really help with some of the challenges we faced at times with not having clear alignment of expectations and responsibilities within our project. Stakeholder engagement was also challenging, you know, without a PM at the helm to really walk through the defined milestones for a project. Stakeholders reported, you know, lacking a sense of understanding where projects were, which milestones were required, and when and which projects might be prioritized within academics over others. Created issues with effectively integrating stakeholders outside of academics when you start working cross-departmentally with other departments across the institution. and that's really kind of helped Joe find his place and really get academics project management space in the place it needs to be. And then scalability was also a challenge. Without clear pathways for tracking, reporting, and centralizing on our academic projects, it was challenging really to be able to scale and track through where we are, how much resources the institution's committing to projects, so on and so forth. So move on to the next slide here. So with Joe coming on board and really kind of what we've been trying to do, the need to create a project management culture and mindset became very apparent right off the bat. When Joe came in, he was able to increase efficiencies and effectiveness, really establishing a clear project management practices, which has helped with improving the speed and accuracy of stakeholders and task completion and achieving objectives within those projects. Enhanced collaboration and communication, really the defined strategy for promoting and integrating a project management culture within academics, and it significantly helped in strengthening teamwork and overall information exchange kind of across the board, across the institution. And then improved planning and execution of academic initiatives. Having a defined process and worksheet for project management within academics, including project planning processes, has significantly helped with enhancing the organization coordination and implementation of projects. And then the definition of a culture of care in an academic setting. Once we were moving with a solid foundation of project management practices, it became immediately evident that we needed to ensure that our practices embraced all of the pillars of the institutional culture of care. This focused on establishing an environment where the well-being, success, and holistic development of students and the student experience are prioritized and supported by faculty, staff, and administrators. I'm going to pass it off to Joe here, who'll kind of go into defining some of the pillars here with culture of care and how we've integrated into a lot of the practices he has.
Thanks, Brian. So I have to say it's interesting. So when Brian had asked me, Tony had said to him, we could use a project manager for the Culture of Care Council and then ultimately the summit. I said, sure, I'll jump right in. And I jumped in with this idea that it was going to be, project management, you follow the steps, very quantitative. And the first few meetings, things were a bit bumpy. And after talking to Tony and Michelle at times, it was really, they had said, well, gee, how can you bring the culture of care pillars into our process? And I really didn't have an answer first, but then as I thought about it, if you look at the pillars here of empower and communicate, that's really what we did. We brought those two pillars into the project management process. And when I say communicate, I mean, everybody had a say. All the stakeholders had a say in how we manage the Culture of Care Summit. That doesn't mean the project didn't follow a plan, but it meant that we wanted to bring everybody in and give everybody that say and everybody to have that voice and all be communicating together in an effective manner. And we did use Microsoft Teams, we did use Jira, we did have meetings, face-to-face, virtual meetings, if you will, but we really focused on the communicate piece. And empower, it was interesting. I had asked Michelle, would you like to learn how to manage your project in Jira? And I was expecting her to say, no, that's your job. And she said, absolutely. And so Michelle jumped in and she started working and managing the project. And we started sharing the Jira page with different stakeholders. And what we found is all of a sudden we had everybody kind of jumping in and working and wanting to really own their pieces of the project. And it really made my job a lot easier because we had these two pillars at play, and you have really a team approach to managing the project that combines both of these pillars with project management processes. Next slide, Brian. So I want to talk about digging further into the pillars. One of the things that we talked a lot about during the Culture of Care planning for this summit was this idea of coaching and growth. And coaching meaning, how did we, pick each other up? How did we support each other when one person was struggling or one person didn't necessarily know something, or when different teams were challenged with deadlines? And how did we embrace that growth mindset? One of the things that we always talked about was learning from each interaction, learning from each time we had a success, learning from each time that maybe something didn't go the way it needed to. And then on the agile and trust, Michelle will tell you, we put this summit together lightning fast. I think she started 5 months out. I came in with about 3 months left. And so we had to move at a very fast pace, very agile pace. And we also had to trust each other. And we had to trust that we were going to get to yesterday and today. And it may have been some bumps along the way, but if we didn't have that trust in each other and trust in the entire team and the entire organization, we would have never got here, because there were a lot of things that we didn't follow traditional project management. We just blazed the trail as we went so that we could fit all of the tasks and all of the goals and milestones in to the compressed timeline. Next slide. So I want to talk about this slide, and I'm going to kind of put Brian on the spot here a little bit. And I want to talk about the leadership trust piece. I can say that over the time that I've been in my role, that Brian has definitely empowered me to go out and work with different leaders within the organization. And he has trusted me to find my way to interact with them, and also coached me along to give me that ability to work with those leaders. And why I say that's important is that project managers, we don't lead, we influence, right? So without that ability to influence and without that trust, it doesn't work. And Brian, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it right on the head. I think, understanding objectives and what leaders are looking for and what those expectations are is a solid foundational piece. But building your own relationships and building your own brand as a project manager is really what helps kind of build the relationships up, so you can be trusted to continue to take on larger projects and have bigger influence across the institution, which I think, Joe, you've done an amazing job doing so far, as well as the other project managers we have here with UAGC. It's kind of great to see everybody evolve and work differently, but within the same confines and construct that we're trying to use as an institution. It's been fantastic.
Thanks, Brian. And so I want to talk about the other 3 points on this diagram. So we'll go now down to the ethical leadership piece. You hear a lot about ethics and about ethical leadership, but here at UAGC, and I can speak to the Culture of Care Summit project, there was never any time where we all questioned our ethics. That was forefront, right in the Culture of Care. We always made sure, and we always make sure that ethics comes first and ethical leadership. And so while it might seem like it's something that it's a given, it's something that we made sure that we practiced. And then knowledge sharing. I cannot share and say enough about the Culture of Care Council, Michelle and the team, and everybody who gave me a crash course, right? I had come into both the Culture of Care Council and the summit while they were pretty far along. So everybody was very helpful in sharing that knowledge. And what that did for me as a project manager is it helped me to better understand how to help the team get to achieve the goals and the milestones and all that good stuff. And project success, really, it was interesting. So Michelle and I were texting a little bit last night, and I had said to her, she's an inspiration for all of us, and I mean that. And success for this project was yesterday. When we clicked the first session, that to me was success. And I know we had today and yesterday and today, but success was getting to that first session, and success will be getting to the final session with Dr. Packard, right? There's no checking a box here. Then there's no really going in and checking off a task list. Success was you all getting here, everyone participating, things going off very seamlessly. And I can say for this project, it has opened my eyes to how you have to bring culture of care in to not only the project process, but in terms of how you define success, and moving away from really it is a quantitative checklist. And I think that's something Brian and I will work on as we continue to work on academic projects, is how do you bring the culture of care into the success measures of your project? Next slide. And so this one is, so what do we do now, right? So we've all been to a conference. I was telling Brian before we jumped on here, we've all been to a conference, and we go to the conference and we're lifted up, and then we get back to our institution or our organization, and it almost feels like it slides back to business as usual. So this slide here, we're going to talk about, so what do we do next? How do we take the things that Brian introduced in that first slide to define the culture of care? How do we maintain that? And so I'm going to push it to Brian first, and then I will wrap it up. Brian, you want to give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, looking ahead, I think we've got a lot of different ways to go. I think the strongest piece that we've done is really building a strong foundation for how we're going to manage projects and how project management is going to be handled at the institution. You know, working collaboratively with our finance team that has project management, as well as our IT team and our enterprise project management office led by Alyssa Castro, and really kind of centralizing how are we going to make sure that we can report out on all of our projects across the institution. How can we ensure that everything is being handled uniformly so that we can be as efficient as possible and leverage our resources in the most effective way. I think we all know, whether you work here at UAGC or at another institution, resources are always tight. It's an easy way to put it. So making sure that we're leveraging resources appropriately and to have the largest impact on not only our students and staff and faculty and administrators, just to make sure that we can kind of keep the most impactful projects moving forward, and we're not using resources in a way that's not truly having an impact. Obviously, the culture of care is very focused on students and staff, and making sure that we have an empathetic approach to how we're kind of using our work and approaching our work. And I think that the way that we've built these initial foundations and have a strong place of where we're taking project management. Joe was one of the leaders in transitioning all of our academic projects into JIRA and making sure that we have a way to report out and give visibility to projects and key milestones and key components of the project as we're continuing to move forward, so that everybody has full visibility. Transparency is always something that I'm a huge proponent of. If I know it, everyone should know it. Let's share all the information. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page. And I think that's one of those steps that allows us to kind of continue to integrate this culture of care. We want everybody to know what's going on, understand where they're at with projects, understand what we need to be doing to kind of keep things moving forward. So.
Thanks, Brian. So I will talk about the three boxes here with the research in them, because these were, I spent quite a bit of time looking for these to make sure I had the right research to connect with what we were talking about here. And so I'll go to the box at the top there. It's a modern approach to project management defines the project success as the situation when the right value has been delivered to the stakeholders at a sufficient level. And I think that's something, to Brian's point, that we will start to talk about, is what is the value of the project? Where does our project bring value, and how does that value connect to the stakeholders? And so that is something that we will, and that connects to the pillars of culture of care as well. The box towards the bottom there, where it talks about the collaborative arrangement focusing on stakeholder engagement. What does stakeholder engagement mean? What does it mean to engage stakeholders who may be at different leadership levels, to bring them all into a project and really level the playing field so that all stakeholders can feel that they're heard, and not just having stakeholders at different levels feeling like, well, if I say something, it may not be taken, or it may be taken in a wrong way. So it's really working on improving stakeholder engagement. And then the last box over there, as I mentioned before, it's all about knowledge management and knowledge sharing. And it's about having, not only in academics, but across the institution, sharing that institutional knowledge, sharing that knowledge to say, well, even though this is how we did it in the past, how can we improve on that? How can we use that past knowledge as we start to develop projects, as we start to move the institution forward? So, like I said, the rest of the slides here really is about the research that we collected. That is really all I had here on our topics. Any questions, or if we want to have a dialogue?
I guess I'll ask one kind of even related to just the summit itself. Like, what were some of the bigger challenges, Joe, that you faced dealing with that and sort of applying this? Because I know there were some hurdles along the way.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm a quantitative guy, right? I'm a quantitative thinker, and as a project manager, that's my first go-to. And this really was, Michelle and Tony and the team were like, we need to bring the qualitative side out, right? It's a culture of care, right? It's not a culture of metrics. So it was really thinking about, how do I bring in that qualitative piece in all of our interactions and discussions, and keep the metrics and keep the deadlines and the tasks and all that stuff in front of everyone, but also bring in that qualitative, that care piece, so that it just didn't feel like it was all just about the metrics.
Okay, they're thinking. I guess maybe we can wrap it up then. Joe, Brian, any closing comments you want to share? Final words of wisdom?
I mean, wisdom? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us today. I know that project management can be kind of nerdy at times, and Joe and I are constantly talking about it and how we can kind of build upon it and really help, showcase some of the work that's being done within academics. And I think that's kind of the direction we're trying to go, and integration of this culture of care mindset, and the pillars that are kind of the foundation of the culture of care is really where we're focused on how we can kind of continue to improve. So, Joe?
I would say, one of the things that attracted me to UAGC and I love about being in the role that I'm in is the fact that Brian is willing to, so there was no person before me. It's not like we can go back and say, well, so-and-so did this. Brian had said to me when he brought me on, look, we're going to shake this up. We want to bring something here to the academic team that perhaps we haven't had before, or perhaps we had and we want to rebrand it. So, really even though, as he said, this stuff is very nerdy to everyone else, for me, I get a chance to really say, how can we shape the institution from a project management perspective? And I absolutely love that. And that's what drives me to take on all the projects that I do, and especially the Culture of Care Summit. And I'll just share, we're taking a real quick break, and we'll be back at it in a couple months, planning for next year. And we're going to get right back into it. So I'm appreciative of being able to have managed it and supported this project.
Well, that's cool. And you just sparked another question for me. We still got a couple minutes, so maybe you can kind of clarify, like, how, because you're trying to bring this project management approach to academics and all of that. So how does it compare to, say, the corporate or the business world or other areas where project management is really like a bigger part of what they do?
It's a great question, and I will lean on Brian here. It was interesting. Probably my first or second week here, Brian had said, "Look, we can't really dump all that heavy project management lingo on everyone, right? We can't bring all the PMI, right?" And I said, I had stacks of books. He's like, "Great, that lingo will just go, it'll go over here." So really, it is tailoring the lingo and taking the project management pieces out of, right, the best practices and translating them into what we do here. And in fact, there are times where Brian will say to me, well, we got to call that something different, right? Because if we share it to stakeholders, they're going to be, right, they're not going to get it, if you will, if you come strictly with the lingo. And in fact, and I'll share this, Brian, it's probably taken Brian and I a little over a year to get to the point where I'll say a project management thing, and he'll say, "Dude, what are you talking about, dude? You got to break that down for me so I can explain it. What was that? I have no idea what you just said." So,
yeah, it's very
Brian,
true.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so I came from registrar operations and was very heavily in, like, everything we did was a project. Everything we did was a very formalized process to kind of get things moving, and we got sign off and all this stuff. And I came to academics, and it was a little bit more of like, all right, like, okay, let's just do this and see what happens and do this. And there wasn't like a formalized approach for a lot of things. I think it's been the biggest challenge to what Joe said is that in some of these other departments, you have a project management expectation with where you're going with things. With academics, it's a much more philosophical discussion and having a larger picture view before you can kind of really build it into a project. And it's kind of navigating those waters, especially when you're working with like large groups of faculty and large groups of staff, and trying to like find a common ground to move forward and actually kick a project off. I think that's the biggest difference. It's like the initial discussions and really making sure that you've solidified what are the key objectives, how are we going to define success, how are we going to make sure that this project is moving in the right direction. That is a little, it's definitely different within academics than in other departments across the institution. And I think we're slowly getting to where people understand that, you know, if you want to make a change, you want to make it's going to be a project at some level. We're going to get key stakeholder buy-in across the institution. This is no longer living within a silo or within a vacuum within academics alone. We are working in collaboration and hand in hand with every department across the institution. I think that's kind of been the slow transition that we're making within academics. I love to see it because we've got buy-in from all these other departments that want to give us feedback, want to help us to make sure that we're catching everything that might be an issue, or that we're taking into consideration other departments, processes, systems, everything with whatever we're trying to accomplish. So it's been really good.
Cool. No, thank you both. Appreciate the follow-up on that. This has been very, very intriguing, interesting. So thanks so much for closing out the day for us. Liz, put the link in the chat there for the final little session. But thank you, Joe and Brian and everyone else, for sticking around here to the end. And we'll bump on over there to that next session and we'll wrap it up.
And thanks, Joe, for your support of the whole summit. I know Michelle's really appreciated that.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good day.
Okay, take care.
See ya.